It's Christmas Eve and Vivian is on a work call about a meeting. Seems the meeting can't be rescheduled even though it's a festive holiday, and she's spending time with her daughter Jane. While her mother is on the call, Jane plays a game called Geography with Michael. They're at the St. Regis Plaza in New York City. Vivian, a Broadway producer, notices one of her movie posters askew at a shop window, so she goes in to set it straight. Now, passers-by can easily see the poster. Jane takes a liking to the poster because it features a woman in an elegant bridal dress. She looks like a grown-up doll, and little Jane is mesmerized. It's Jane's birthday, and she's supposed to be spending it with her mother who's MIA at the moment. She has Michael, her imaginary friend, to keep her company while her mother is away. They're at an eatery having ice cream, and on Michael's request, Jane makes up some elaborate story about 3 boys and a woman seated tables away. She tells Michael the boys belong to a circus where the performers are forced to perform for alien kids that tap dance instead of applaud. With that type of imagination, Jane might just become a writer for her mother's production when she's older. Vivian returns while Jane is showing Michael how the alien kids tap dance. She's gotten a handful of stares, and her mother, embarrassed, lowers her back on her seat. They'd been 2 servings of ice cream for mother and daughter, but Jane had eaten both. Technically, she shared it with Michael, but Michael isn't real. Vivian comments the meeting was a waste of time. She'd been asked to produce a musical about teenage vampires, and the idea was totally ridiculous to her. She decides they should get moving, and Jane's protests fall on deaf ears. Her mother shouldn't be in a hurry to have them leave, as they should still be celebrating her birthday. Jane wishes she was still young enough to believe that if she closed her eyes and thought really hard about it, she'd be invisible. Michael cheers her up with an interesting pickup line. He makes her notice a mirror by her left and calls her the prettiest girl he's seen. If that doesn't make a girl smile, nothing will. Vivian takes Jane to Tiffany's as part of her birthday tradition. Vivian has drilled in Jane that she has to be independent and never ever believe in all that true love crap. Michael promises Jane that Vivian's view is distorted and true love is nice and beautiful and lasts forever. At Tiffany's, Jane takes a liking to a yellow diamond wedding ring. The attendant helps her try it on, and she gushes about how pretty it is to Michael. Meanwhile, Vivian has picked a necklace for Jane. Michael says that she'll have that same ring when she grows up, but as much as Jane likes the ring, it can't be her wedding ring because it's yellow and diamonds are for engagements and weddings. The attendant informs her that she's actually wearing a yellow diamond. This makes Michael affirm she'll indeed have that ring then much later. A yellow diamond for a special one-of-a-kind Jane. When the clock strikes 5:15, Michael reveals to Jane he has to leave. Jane was born 10 years ago at 5:15, and this means she's officially 10 years old now. It's at this age that kids start to gradually let go of their childhood and become more self-aware. They start making more conscious decisions and, well, there's no longer a need for make-believe. Michael will have to leave, as it's the rule that all imaginary friends leave when their assigned kids turn 10. Michael breaks Jane's heart even more when he reveals that he'll be leaving forever. Jane can't come to terms with the news. It's too sudden, and she wishes to leave with Michael if he really has to go. They first met at Tiffany's, so that's where they'll have to say goodbye. He informs her that she won't remember him when he's gone. Jane hates to see him go because he's her best friend. He knows everything about her, and she's grown to love him. The feelings are mutual for him, so much so that they're both crying. It's the first time Jane has seen Michael cry, and he's shocked he had it in him. Either way, it's goodbye. Jane starts wailing and screaming for Michael to come back, getting the attention of everyone in the store. He'd left in the elevator, and she frantically pressed at it to open up. Her mother tries to pacify her by pretending Michael is still there when the elevator doors open again. Jane, however, knows Michael is gone. Helping her put on her new necklace, Vivian infers that Michael leaving might mean she doesn't need him anymore. Jane doesn't agree. 20 years later, Jane is getting married to Hugh, whom her friends initially knew as Dr. Sellers. She's having a bachelorette party at her house and got gifts from Tiffany's for all of them. They all toast to the newest couple in the city. Jane wakes up to a message from Hugh asking her to watch him on the Good Morning show, promising that they'll meet after. She lazily gets out of bed, takes a shower, and is dressed up when Hugh's interview starts. He's an actor who played a character, Dr. Mark Sellers, on a popular TV series. Now he's ventured into plays for theater, and he tells the host that the theater is a new and exhilarating venture for him. Jane goes about her day while the interview is happening. Her mother left her a voicemail expressing worry that her wedding is less than 30 days away, and she's not done planning it. She might have a broken shower that needs fixing, but she has ample good relationships with her neighbors. She promised treats for Mrs. Greenberg's dog, and helped another neighbor with his bingo card. Meanwhile, Hugh is still having his interview. The host touches on the autobiography he's written, even though he's still quite young. His response paints him in the best, egocentric light possible. He'd proposed to Jane 6 months prior on the Good Morning Show. Jane arrives at Tiffany's to pick up her ring. She's become quite popular, and her attendant wants to know what it's like getting married to a celebrity. She asks Jane if Hugh is just as dreamy as he's displayed on television, and if he's her soulmate. Jane can't reconcile with the concept of soulmates or true love, but if she could, then she's sure Hugh would fit the category. On her way out, she spots 2 children, a boy and a girl, entering the store in a play-like manner she remembers. She watches them for a moment, then looks across the street to see there's a guy standing there, as if waiting for her. She hails a taxi, and he starts walking towards her, not mindful of a coming taxi that could have run him over. He's surprised that the taxi driver can see him, hear him, and most definitely wants him out of the road so he can drive through. Jane boards a taxi at the other end of the road, still cutting glances at the man before she has to leave. Jane meets up with her fiancé. He's not so happy that the interviews keep bringing up his role as Dr. Sellers when they should be focusing on his new book and play. Jane shows him the engagement ring she got sized, and he shows her that they made it to page 6 on the newspaper. She's already aware of that because her mom likes to use him for publicity for the theater. He's not complaining though, thinking they graced the papers well. He still has some publicity to run concerning his book, and Jane promises the wedding plans are almost done. He kisses her, expressing excitement over their coming wedding and marriage. Jane now works with her mom, who's very much still a workaholic. She's not sorry for publishing a private kiss shared between her daughter and her soon-to-be son-in-law in the newspaper. The Broadway production is still at the forefront of her mind. She admits that her mind is constantly whirling over the next possible course to have them booked. She's at least happy about the ring and hopes Jane has picked up her wedding dress. Jane hasn't picked a wedding dress. She's tried out so many, but she just hasn't found the perfect fit. While she's in the changing room, the mystery man from earlier walks into the store. He knows her name and explains they were best buddies growing up. He stirs up memories she can't place and leaves her struggling to guess his name and face. She spots him again at the food market and calls her friend Jacqueline to report she has a stalker on her hand. She'd seen him twice before in different parts of the city. Jacqueline feels Jane is overreacting, and it's most likely just a coincidence she keeps bumping into him. Their call is cut short when the mystery guy pops up again, and Jane demands to know what he wants. On the contrary, he's there to know what she wants. He only appears when he's needed. She opts to call the police, and it spurs another intimate memory only she should know. He finally reveals he's her imaginary friend from when she was younger, but that only sends her running. Jacqueline is a therapist, and Jane urgently needs to consult with her. She interrupts a 10-year-old boy who is scheduled to see the doctor because his mother believes he is depressed and delusional. She tells Jacqueline about her weird encounter with the guy who claims to be her imaginary friend. It's disturbing because she does remember having an imaginary friend when she was 10. Jacqueline deduces the guy must be an actor who knows about her play and is trying to get a spot. Concerning the wedding plans, Jane is still having trouble making decisions about everything. Jacqueline feels if she's having trouble with little decisions, then big decisions would be a real hassle. It's something Jacqueline has said before, because Jane immediately defends that Hugh is the man for her. It doesn't matter that she's known him for only a year, and he proposed on live television. It didn't coerce her into saying yes to the man that she truly loves. The moment Jane steps out of the building, Michael is waiting for her. Convinced that he's an actor, she tells him to follow procedures if he wants an audition. He asserts he's not an actor, then recalls in detail that fateful day 20 years ago, on her 10th birthday at 5:15. He has Jane's full attention now, even as he mentions he's Michael. She stares at him with a mixture of confusion and disbelief, and then shifts to what seems like realization, before unexpectedly slapping him. When the tension has cooled down, Jane apologizes for hitting him. She's just confused about what's going on, and remembers Michael left her in despair. She's still trying to come to terms with the stranger in front of her, all grown up. He first came into her life when she was lonely and needy, but now she's got a perfect life with a great job, an apartment, and a partner. Michael isn't easy to shake off, so she exasperatedly decides to let him tag along with her to the theater. He still has his childish, playful manner and expects her to have it too, but she's grown. She doesn't play games like Secret Lives anymore, or wants to talk to an imaginary friend either. If it's a crazy dream, then she hopes she wakes up soon. Michael asks why she chose to manage her mother's theater instead of becoming a writer or pastry chef. Those aspirations were for a 10-year-old though, and she's moved on. Michael confides in another imaginary friend, Peter, who's just as confused as he is. Peter thinks Michael might make another exit on Jane's birthday, which is just right around the corner. He just needs to figure out what she needs before then. Jane and Hugh have a dinner date. He's chattering on about his career milestone, but Jane isn't listening. She explains she's had a weird day and starts to go into details when Michael shows up and Hugh invites him to sit at their table against Jane's wish. She nervously introduces the two men, and Hugh starts by asking Michael what he does. Jane has to lie on his behalf that he's a teacher, and Hugh remarks that his mother was also a teacher. Hugh doesn't think Jane has ever mentioned Michael to her, and it's because she hasn't. She coins friend as Michael's last name, and Michael feels it suits him well. When the waiter comes, Hugh orders for him and Jane, but Michael gathers the meal has mushrooms which Jane is allergic to. He gently pushes for Jane to have something else that wouldn't make her sick, and she easily decides on pasta instead. Hugh didn't know she was allergic to mushrooms, nor did he think it was ideal she was having pasta at such a time. Michael makes the dinner very awkward. He does it innocently too. He asks Hugh what he loves about Jane, and Hugh replies that she's organized and keeps him on track. Michael feels the answer isn't personal enough and shares his own reasons for loving Jane. They include little and embarrassing details, like how her ponytail bounces and how she sings in her sleep. Jane has to clarify that she and Michael were not ever romantically involved, and Michael is referring to one time from kindergarten. Two women come to ask Hugh for an autograph, and Michael comes to understand that Hugh is an actor. After dinner, Jane is ready to bolt home. Michael thanks Hugh for paying for dinner and bids them good night as they board a taxi. In the taxi, Hugh comments that Michael is friendly and a little odd. He also knows a lot about Jane. The taxi drops Jane at her apartment complex, and Michael is there already, seated out on a bench. She hands him her business card to contact her with if he needs anything, rather than following her around. On Michael's request, Jane clarifies that Hugh and her have different schedules that would interfere, so they don't live together, but she'll move in with him after they get married. Jane bids him goodnight and starts to walk away, but has reasons to turn back and gape. It's winter, and he plans to sleep out on a bench like some homeless dude. He insists he'll be fine. It'd be like when they camped out on the balcony when she was younger. She remembers the day, recalling it was fun. Michael remarks that he likes Hugh, and he can see Jane loving him because he does have some great superficial qualities. Jane doesn't want to be indirectly called one of Hugh's fangirls, and starts to walk away. Her conscience pulls her back, and she invites Michael to spend just one night in her apartment. She rants about all the things that need fixing in the apartment, then accepts that she won't be living here for much longer, so she needs to stop worrying. She helps prepare the couch for Michael to sleep on, then she asks why he's come back. All he can think of is that he's come back to assist her in some way, so he wants to know what she needs assistance with. She says she's fine and capable, and he agrees. He's always been sure she'd grow up to become quite amazing, and he's glad he gets to witness it. The compliment makes her giggle before hurrying to put a distance between her and the current bizarre situation that's refusing to go away. The next day she wakes up with a shock. Michael slept at the foot of her bed like a pet would. He excuses that he felt she would still be afraid of the dark, hence him suddenly in her room. She shoos him back to the couch and tells herself she must be having a brain aneurysm, and it's only a matter of time before she wakes up and everything is fine. When she gets dressed for work and set to leave, Michael is very much still real and has made friends with her neighbors. She asks him to leave the key under the mat when he finally decides to stop being so comfortable in her house. At work, Jane asks her mom if she remembers when she used to have an imaginary friend. Vivian remembers and is glad that phase of Jane's life is over, because she actually wanted to send her to a therapist who told her Jane would grow out of it. Jane mentions that she met someone that reminds her of Michael, and Vivian reads it as Jane is having an affair. Jane asserts that's not the case, and Vivian reasons that Jane is having wedding jitters at best. She reminds Jane that Hugh is as best as they can get and she shouldn't go screwing this golden opportunity. Vivian is still cynical over the concept of love because it dealt her a hard card. Vivian reminds her daughter that Hugh adores her, and Jane promises the feelings are mutual. Vivian wasn't expecting to hear otherwise. When she gets home, she's almost moved to tears. The apartment had needed several touches to make it a proper home, and Michael had gotten to work in her absence. He painted the place like she wanted and put the furniture in place, adding Christmas decorations. He'd even put together her TV stand and go ahead to light up her Christmas tree. No one has ever been this nice to her before, but just when she thinks she's seen it all, she gets a whiff of something from the kitchen. Michael made her mac and cheese. Michael also fixed her shower. He was an imaginary friend to a kid whose dad was a plumber. However, he could have said that firsthand, rather than asking her to go to the bathroom and take off her clothes. Michael follows her to Hugh's play. On seeing Vivian, he starts off with how excited he is to learn that she's a better mother now. She accepts his backhand compliment and asks who he is, so he introduces himself as Michael, aka the Delusion. He knows Vivian never meant any harm and has always just tried to protect her daughter from her own failures. Younger Michael used to think Vivian was mean, but now he sees she was just misguided, and he forgives her. Jane, on the other hand, stands bracing herself for the scolding she expects from her mother once the play is over and she can finally raise her voice. After the play, during the reception, Hugh finds Michael is still attached to Jane. He expresses his jealousy, and she voices that Michael is just an old friend that can't come in between them. Vivian pulls Hugh away to greet guests, and Michael's analysis, once they're gone, is that Hugh is talented, but Vivian is the same. It's Monday, and Michael wakes Jane up with a cup of coffee. The theater is dark on Mondays, so Michael asks what they could spend their day doing. She still has a wedding to plan, so she has a busy day. No time for museums or stay at home like Michael initially suggests. Jane still hasn't decided on the flower arrangements, and the florist needs her to make a decision right away because Christmas orders are piling up. Jane's adamant that the wedding has to be perfect, and that's why she's had a hard time deciding. Michael is with her and easily picks out one of the bouquets. His reasons are the bouquet has her favorite colors, and the roses remind her of her grandmother. Jane sees he's right, and it's settled. The florist is relieved and comments that Jane should bring Michael, her fiancé, to all her appointments. Jane clarifies they're not engaged and are just friends. With Michael, Jane can suddenly decide on stuff. She had a narrowed-down list of cake flavors, and after tasting them with Michael, she picks the one. Next on the agenda is the dress. She's feeling more confident and tells Michael she's narrowed down her choice to 6 dresses. Michael already knows which one she'd like best. He takes her to the theater and jogs her memory about the first play they attended together. She remembers it well as it was her first and favorite. She sees the poster in the hallway and realizes the actress on it is wearing her dream dress. She'd fallen in love with the dress the first time she saw it on the actress on stage. With this revelation, they go to the dress store, and Jane dons her dress. Michael is captivated by how gorgeous she looks and draws close for a kiss she doesn't refuse. When it's over, she starts to mildly panic, refusing to acknowledge what just happened. When they're out of the store and heading back home, Jane stands. The kiss was a mistake that can't repeat itself because she's engaged to a man that she loves. She just got overexcited about finally finding the dress, and her senses went into overdrive. Michael is game for respecting her boundaries. She would prefer that he stops following her, but yeah, that's not gonna happen. Jane and Michael wait to see Jacqueline. Her patient Nathan, whom Jane met on her last visit, has an imaginary friend that Michael can see. Once her office is free, Jane rushes in to tell her friend about her day. Jacqueline notes that Jane's features brighten when she talks about Michael. Jane confides in Jacqueline that she kissed Michael. While the girls are discussing, Michael talks to Paul, Nathan's imaginary friend. Everyone in the imaginary world has learned about Michael in limbo, and he shares his experience, stating all imaginary friends should be put through the ringer so they get to experience feelings with the same intensity that humans do. Jacqueline gets a peek at Michael and declares he's hot and looks at Jane with pure admiration. Jane doesn't like the fact that Jacqueline is basically picking Michael's side over Hugh's, but Jacqueline is a therapist for a reason. She knows Hugh is egocentric, and Jane needs to face it. Michael suggests they head out to celebrate since they're done with the wedding preparations. They head to the bar and order the same drinks. Michael tells the bartender that he and Jane love dancing. MC Hammer's "Can't Touch This" starts playing, and Michael busts out some moves. Jane is initially embarrassed, but he's far from a bad dancer, just bold. When the number is over, she high-fives him, then they pull in for a hug. At night, both of them can't sleep, fighting the urge to be closer to each other. They continue to hang out, rekindling their long-lost friendship. Jane is even open to playing Secret Lives again. On this particular day, Jane is getting ready for Hugh's book signing. Hugh will come pick her up. Michael plans to stay in the apartment while Jane is gone, and the two engage in an innocent pillow fight that turns questionable when Hugh walks in on them. This leads to a row between the engaged couple. Jane tries to assure Hugh that she's just housing Michael out of pity, not out of romantic feelings. Hugh feels Jane acts too naive, and it makes people like her neighbors, and Michael, use and take advantage of her. He sees Michael as a threat that can come between him and his future wife, and is livid, but willing to wait for her for 10 minutes, or he'll attend the book signing alone. Michael is in earshot of their row, and Jane is particularly loud about him, not having a job or a life, and she doesn't really care about him. She clarifies that she didn't mean to come off as rude and tough, but they have to come back to reality. She's not ready to risk what she has with Hugh over an imaginary friend that makes her feel 10 again. It was nice to feel so young, but the reality is that she's grown up now, and Michael hasn't. Michael tells Peter that he wants to learn to fit in Jane's world. He's blurred the lines between his responsibilities as an imaginary friend and wanting to be a real part of her life. Peter warns him to stick to the rules and not push more than he's already done. His work with Jane is done, and he needs to exit her life, or there could be consequences he might not like. Peter's warnings fall on deaf ears, and Michael goes looking for a job at a restaurant. Jane and Hugh reconcile. Jane confides in him her dream to become a writer. She's had the aspiration since she was 10, and she's ready to act on it. Hugh somehow makes the conversation about him, feeling like Jane is trying to share his spotlight. Michael goes for a drink, chats with the receptive bartender, and is motivated to call Jane and tell her he misses her. On her end, she gets the voicemail letting her know that he got a job washing dishes, and he misses her. Jane makes comfort food for Hugh, and he complains it's carbs and sugar, not what he needs when he's auditioning for an important role. Seeing her sad demeanor, he takes a bite of her mac and cheese to make her happy. Jane's inner child is screaming to be let out. She wants to go out with Hugh and build a snowman. Hugh recognizes it as something she and Michael would do. Jane professes she's just trying to be happy, and Hugh assures them they're the picture of happiness. Christmas is fast approaching, and Jane doesn't know what to get Hugh for Christmas. She spots a scarf that Michael will like, and Jacqueline encourages her to personally take the scarf to Michael at his place of work. Hugh wouldn't have to know as he's currently in California surrounded by beautiful actresses. When Jane goes looking for Michael at his place of work, she finds the venue crowded. Michael is an overnight sensation. The previous chef quit, and he took over. The menu list is named after Jane and all of her favorite food growing up. People like food that reminds them of their childhood, and Jane's childhood favorites weren't so different from other people's. They catch up a bit. The wedding with Hugh is still on, although he's currently in California for his audition. Michael has grown popular with the ladies, and one of them asks if he's coming for their usual drinks after work. He invites Jane, but she declines, stating it's late. He sees her to the exit, and she wonders if this will be the last time they see each other. Michael hopes it's not. They wish each other Merry Christmas, and Jane drags her feet through the snowy night. She doesn't get far before Michael catches up and closes the distance with a kiss. Back at her apartment, they unwrap more than just presents and have a merry little Christmas in bed. When it's over, Jane pillow talks while Michael cradles her in his arms. She never forgot Michael even after he left. When she realized he wasn't coming back, she pushed him away from her memory. Now that he's here again, she doesn't want to lose him ever again. Michael professes his love for her. Jane wakes up and finds the other side of the bed empty. After peering out of her window, she goes across the road where Michael is waiting on a bench with breakfast. He has something to tell her, and she beckons on him for a walk. While they walk, she expresses she's had several happy days thanks to him. Michael breaks it to her that he'll have to leave, and he doesn't have a choice. Jane is hurt because he came back, made him fall in love with her, and now he's leaving again. Jane doesn't want to hear anything he has to say. If he has to leave again, she'll erase him from her memory. She runs off, and Michael is left with a broken heart. He doesn't initially know it's a broken heart until a passerby explains it to him. It's something he's feeling because he's human. It's Christmas Eve, and Jane is getting ready to be a bride. Jacqueline asks if she's sure she wants to go through with the wedding, and Jane relays her mantra about Hugh being right for her, and her life is perfect. Just before she's supposed to walk down the aisle, Jacqueline advises that the right option isn't always the best. Hugh and Jane walk down the aisle together. He's excited about their pending skiing adventure during their honeymoon, but Jane admits she hates skiing. She's told him before, but he wasn't listening. He doesn't know her favorite color or flower, but Michael knows. They keep whispering until they get to the altar, where Jane decides she can't go through with marrying Hugh. She's experienced real love, and Hugh can't give it to her. Her mother warns she'd be making a huge mistake if she leaves. Vivian promises walking out would ruin Christmas Eve and her birthday. Jane had forgotten it was her birthday. She has 15 minutes before the clock strikes 5:15, and she needs to find Michael. They met at Tiffany, so that's where he's supposed to say goodbye. The store still has the yellow diamond ring Jane took a liking to. Michael is just about to leave through the elevator when Jane comes running to him. She tells him she loves him, and they're soulmates. He's her true love. Michael loves her too, but he still can't stay. Against her wishes, he has to leave. Jane leaves the store, alone, dejected and red-eyed. She's watching a couple when she hears Michael's voice, so she turns around. He couldn't leave because he's come to realize that it was his turn to need her. He doesn't exist without her. So it's screwed the rules because he's staying. What's even more cute is that he got her ring. They walk together, playing secret lives, Jane's wedding dress sweeping the lengths of the sidewalk.